Hey everyone, this is John Agroni, and you are watching or listening to John in Theory. And I have a good friend on the stream today. It's Cory Woodroof. Cory, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for agreeing to do this kind of last minute. We didn't know we were going to be doing this until like yesterday, but I'm so excited. This is your first time on the live stream.
Yes, it is. I've probably live streamed at some point in some way, but this has been a minute. So
I
this
don't
is my
remember.
first.
There's
Yeah,
so many. They just bleed together.
that's not a name I've heard in a long.
Well, you're my second guest ever. First guest was Charlie, our mutual good friend, and that was fun. But this is a very different kind of thing. We're talking about something that I don't think I've ever talked about like this before, and that's a Dungeons and Dragons thing, right? And you've
Mm.
never played Dungeons and Dragons, correct?
No, no. I think we were talking about before we did this. I've been in. I feel like this is like Lord of the Rings, and I've been in like a separate era of being a geek. Like I've been over in my own kingdom, like
Right.
watching movies and writing movie reviews for fun, and doing lots of other things. And now it's like I'm come to the Fellowship, and I'm like, all right, now I've got to start my new quest.
Well, on that note, so for people who don't know you, which I'm sure, I mean, come on, you're pretty famous. Everybody should know who you are at this point.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, there's
Oh
Zendaya, there's
man.
Tom Holland, and then there's Cory Woodroof.
hmm
Yeah, so yeah, you kind of mentioned a little bit of like what you're up to, but what's like your deal? Who are you?
So I am a journalist full time. I'm kind of
Whoa, fake news media?
yes, exactly. That's kind of
Okay.
our bread and butter. I just got done, being fake newsy about all the Spider-Man sequels. If you haven't heard, that guy on SNL, he would get the headlines wrong. That
Hmm.
character Bobby Moynihan used to do.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of like,
That's
yeah,
you.
this Spider-Man movie. He's gonna be fighting Batman this time. They're bringing all the Batmans in. Like, no, no. But
Sorry, Cory,
um,
I don't know what Spider-Man is, so you're just gonna have to
so
pretend.
basically, Spider-Man is. I don't know if you've heard of comic books. So these new movies are really big. The kids love them, but
Hmm.
um,
That would be
yeah,
a decent segue, by the way, into.
yes, yes. Now we're debating.
Yeah.
Are movie theaters going to die? No, that would be
No, no, no.
no.
The comic book movie is dead. Long live the comic book
Yes,
movie.
no. This is having a Bresson come back.
No, we're actually here to talk about something that I've been working on for quite a while. This has been a dream of mine for the longest time to develop and actually live play an Incredibles Dungeons and Dragons game. And so, for those of you who don't know, or maybe you've heard of Dungeons and Dragons, but you don't really, it's not your thing, like Cory Woodruff. Dungeons and Dragons is an RPG tabletop imagination game. The whole idea is like you build a character, you go on a quest with other players, and you have a hero, or sorry, dungeon master, who kind of walks you through the game and like, comes up with the scenarios. You roll dice like this over here. So these are my dice. But you have like many sided die, and you use it to like go through like these scenarios and these events, and it's really fun. One of the first things that like really introduced me to some of the format of D&D was the show Community. Did you watch Advanced Dungeons and Dragons on that
Oh
show?
yeah, love Community.
Okay, it's not the most like accurate, I guess, to like what Dungeons and Dragons is really like. It's a great like introduction though. It's a great like overview of like the spirit of it, the fun of it. And I like Dungeons and Dragons. I haven't played a ton of it. I've played like, about 30 to 40 hours worth of it, which sounds like a lot, but honestly, when you play Dungeons and Dragons, it flies by. But I've had this idea for quite a while of like, well, what if we could do a Dungeons and Dragons set in the world of the Incredibles? Because I love the Incredibles. I don't know if you know this, but I'm a fan of like Pixar movies.
What? No.
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
Oh, have
Um,
you heard of the Pixar theory? Oh, have you heard of that thing? It's where I
no.
remember that when I was in high school. So basically, there's this dude out there that
Yes,
thinks
yes.
that all the Pixar movies are connected with each other. I know, isn't that crazy?
Theory explain it to me for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but like, yeah, so The Incredibles, obviously, it's a great Pixar movie. It's one of my favorites. The whole idea of it is that it's set in like this world where there are superheroes in like the 1950s, 1960s. And so I thought it would be super fun if you had a Dungeons and Dragons campaign but you build like your own super in this time period. There are like Dungeons and Dragons like superhero variants out there. I've kind of looked into some of them, and I've found them to be kind of like not basic, but like they don't have like the unique flair that like Incredibles has, because that's such a fully thought out world. And that's kind of the point, because like Dungeons and Dragons is supposed to be very open ended. That said, the more I like looked into this and started building this out, the more I was like, I've got to make this. So what you're about to see here is my like development. I've had a lot of help, like a lot of like references. I've looked at guidebooks. I've looked at like other things that have like built upon Dungeons and Dragons. One of my favorites, and I've got to credit a really great podcast for this, is One Piece D&D. Cory, do you know One Piece, the anime slash manga?
Yeah, I've seen like probably bits and snippets, throughout just my pop culture surveying, but I'm not super familiar.
I'm a super fan. I've watched all the way up to the most recent episodes, and there's literally like they're about to hit episode, or sorry, not episode, but the manga is supposed to hit pretty soon, chapter 1000. I think actually it just did. I haven't read it yet. So 1,000 manga chapters. Yeah, I've read every single one, and I've watched all of the anime. Absolutely love One Piece. And One Piece is a great world for Dungeons and Dragons, and that was one of the first things that like got me like, I've got to like actually do this now. I got to get people involved and finish this, which what you're looking at is the handbook that I put together. And Cory, I sent this to you, and you've seen some of it, right? Like you're a little familiar with this thing I
Yes,
made.
I kind of have a general idea of what you're going for, which helps. And I've seen both of the Incredibles movies, which hopefully is beneficial.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, I'm familiar. Yes, I've heard of that. It's all the ones like Iron Man and Thor and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Cory, the plan is, what I want to do is do an actual live play. And this is what you and I are preparing for right now. We're going to go through the handbook, and we're going to make Cory's super character. It's going to be a lot of fun. And again, I should stress that like this is like the amalgamation of a lot of work on my part, and I want to make sure it's perfect. So if you're watching, listening, whatever, and you see anything that doesn't sound quite right, if something to you seems unbalanced, or you think you have like an idea that could make this even better, especially if it's like even truer to the Incredibles universe, sound off. I want all the feedback in the world, even if it's negative, especially if it's critical. And because I want to make this thing really cool. And we are actually going to be doing a live play of Operation Super. The plan is to do it next month. There are 5 playable characters who are going to be involved. Cory is one of them. Cory, you are the dedicated noob. You're the only one who has never played D&D, which is excellent. I'm so glad you said yes, because first of all, it can be intimidating to play D&D when you've never played it before and you're playing with people who've done it before, but we're excited for like this for you, because it is fun introducing people to the world of D&D. So as we go through this, if you have questions, if you're confused about something, do not be like hesitant. Be like, I don't get this. Like, I will do my best to explain it.
All right. So can you tell me, first off, what is Pixar? I think that's the first thing I want to first.
The year is 1976. Ed Catmull. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We should credit, Brad Bird, Ralph Eggleston, the people who really put the world of Incredibles together, the story, the art direction. One of the most intriguing things about Incredibles is its like unique Art Deco design. Like you can kind of see it in the imagery here. And this handbook has like references and concept art throughout the Incredibles movies. That's why I'm hoping all of you watching, as we go through the D&D campaign of this, or not really the campaign yet, I might give some teases to that. Some of the feedback, if you can, is like, hey, that doesn't feel totally Incredibles to me. Maybe you should add this. I want to hear all that, especially from you, Cory, because you've seen the movie so many times.
Yes, I have. So,
Right,
are you one of the people that thinks the second one's better than the first one? Because I feel like that's a
No.
trend that's been catching on. I don't think it is at all. But, like,
I didn't think anybody thought that anymore. Not since it came out.
maybe time has finally fixed it. But I felt like when that first movie, when the second
Time
one
has
came
fixed
out, and some people were like, maybe this is better. And I was like, that's kind of crazy.
There are aspects of Incredibles 2 that I guess are better. Like, it's not like it's lacking in a lot of ways or anything. But no, I mean, I think you can't really match the unique impact of that first movie, and its story structure is pretty uncanny. Syndrome is much better villain, better twist. All that stuff is better. But anyway, let's get started. Cory Woodroof, Phase 1. Your first mission, if you choose to accept it, is to visualize and create a super of your own. Cory, you will be choosing from one of several classes. You're going to be choosing a superpower, a profession, and a background. And then once we figure all of that stuff out, Cory, you will be coming up with, on your own, your origin story and your secret identity. Okay?
Oh, okay.
Now, this first step, this is something to do this is something to do for more experienced D&D players, but because we're doing a live play and other people have already chosen their characters and they've already done these roles, you don't have to do this part. You will be getting a pre-build that is determined by the powers and stuff that you create. Technically, you wouldn't normally do that with D&D, but you are a noob, and I want to make sure that you play the character you want to play since it's your first time. Make sense?
Amen.
But I will quickly walk through what you would normally do in this situation is you would determine your ability scores. So think of it the same way. I'm sure you've played RPGs before, like video games and stuff like that. Anything from like Knights of the Old Republic to even, like BioWare games in general, anything that's like XCOM, whatever, what have you. Normally you would Lego Star Wars would not apply, but sure, if that helps you visualize it. Yeah. But no, you would be doing like special rolls here, determine your like vitality, which affects like your health points, your power, how fast you are, how smart you are, your cunning, your will is very important. All of that stuff is super important. And it also helps determine like what kind of character you want to make after you've done all of this, right? Sure. You can ignore this stuff about effort dice for now. That's something that we talk about later in the creation. But yeah, your score would eventually look something like this. So you see like the vitality, power, dexterity, how that's like kind of in a list under the chart. So it's like you see the numbers like 9, 4, 10, 5, 4, 2.
So basically you're trying to roll various things that are going to aid you in what you're about to do.
Yeah. So like whenever you do something in D&D, you roll for something, right? So if you want to if you want to like run away from somebody and you want to do it effectively, you have to roll for dexterity. And in this case, your dexterity would be 4, and that 2 would be how much effort you can put into it. And that would determine if you're successful in outrunning someone.
This is kind of like one of those books where you like choose the ending, but rather than have like page you turn to decide what happens, you roll dice, and that kind of leads where the narrative is going.
Well, in a sense, what happens mainly is you try to do something, and I, as the hero master, normally a dungeon master, I determine where the story goes based on how you're rolling, or like what happens based on how you're rolling, because I'm the one who builds the world.
Okay.
Right? I know the details that you don't know, and I know that like I have to describe things to you.
So this is why all this stuff happened on Stranger Things, and they would get ticked at each other if like one of them like made the Dungeons and Dragons story like really like highlight their real life, and he does something to piss that person off there. Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense.
Stranger Things is a pretty decent representation of it, yeah. Especially the whole like they play it like literally an entire day and eat pizza. Like that is the spirit of D&D.
So really, at the end of all of this, we're just going to be boys who become men, just like the four of us folks.
No, especially because there are 2 women who will be playing with us. So yeah, you messed up.
We're not going to like have a monster come invade our 80s town or anything.
I don't know yet. I haven't worked that into the campaign, but if that's what you want, sure.
I mean, well, it would actually happen in real life, and then there'd be like a couple of other seasons. You could argue that the other seasons aren't quite as good as the first for the novelty reasons, but I would suggest that they're all probably about the same in actuality. There's a whole in a mall. That would be kind of fun.
This is important to know. So your abilities are kind of, think of it as like you have a set of abilities, and each ability has a subset. Right. So your power is related to athletics and force. Athletics would be like you're trying to like punch a door down. That takes athletics and force. Dexterity is related to stealth and stealing. You want to like sneak around. You want to lockpick something. Dexterity helps with that. Intelligence it has to do with history and investigation. So like if you go to like a town or something and you know more about it than other people because you have more intelligence. Your cunning is related to diplomacy and insight. When you talk to people, maybe you have more insight into like if they're lying, or maybe you can be more diplomatic and persuade them. So like when you roll for things, you don't just roll for dexterity. If you're trying to lockpick, you roll for dexterity and stealing, and you get like certain points and you level up and like extra things related to those abilities. It'll make more sense as we do it, because as we play the game, I'll explain to you in real time, like, okay, Corey, like look at your like list of abilities, and like you'll see the number and you'll try to do things and you'll see your success based on that, right? So it's a learn as you go kind of thing. But that's not the fun part of this. The fun part of this is choosing your character. Are you ready, Corey?
Yes.
Okay. Step 1. I had a step 2, choosing a class, but we're not doing the real step 1, which is your ability score. So the ticker is a little different from what you see on screen. But our step 1 is choosing a character class. Now, the world of the Incredibles is filled with supers of all shapes and sizes. This is what I wrote. Choosing your class of super not only affects your character's abilities and skills, but also determines their physical appearance, ethics, and how you shape their origin story. Choosing a class is your first step in truly differentiating who your super truly is. In Operation Super, there are 5 playable classes to choose from: Incredible, Flexible, Skirmisher, Saboteur, and Berserker. And Corey, I should tell you, each of these 5 playable classes, you'll notice as we go through them in more detail, they relate specifically to a main character from the Incredibles, or a set of different characters, okay? So you'll get a more visual representation as we go, but this is the brief overview. So Corey, if you choose to be an Incredible, then the Incredible is like the standard superhero. It's Mr. Incredible, right? We tend to think of them as being tough, strong, super strong, all of that. But a secondary aspect to an Incredible is their love of the glory days of like the golden age of supers. The campaign is going to start in the year 1956, which is before supers are outlawed in the movies. You're going to be a super living in this world trying to make a name for yourself. Incredibles have a strong moral code, and their historical knowledge is almost unmatched. I should mention at this point, there is one person on our Operation Super team who has already picked Incredible as their class. So there is one person who's Incredible. More than one person can be Incredible, however, because there's a lot of different ways to make these things your own. In fact, I think the only class somebody hasn't chosen yet is Skirmisher, which we'll get into. Okay. Flexibles. So think like Elastigirl. Frozone also fits into this category. Flexibles are the most balanced supers around. Not only can they hold their own in a fight, their quick thinking and predisposition to cunning makes them effective spies in a pinch. Most super teams are better off choosing a Flexible as their leader. Make sense? Skirmishers. You can count on Skirmishers to get the job done. This is like Dash, basically. They're not the smartest supers around, but they have the speed and toughness necessary to take down their enemies without much trouble. Your foes won't see what's coming to them if you have a Skirmisher on your team. Think of a Skirmisher as a really great like marksman, somebody who just is super strong and super cool doing it. Okay. It's related to Dash in the sense that like his raw talent, he's super strong, but he doesn't even realize it sometimes. He has more potential than anything else. That's kind of what the Skirmisher is. And then Saboteur. This is related to Violet. Saboteurs are the most creative class when it comes to using their powers effectively. They're also geared best towards sneaky tactics that can outsmart almost any opponent. With a Saboteur on your team, you're ready to infiltrate even the most secure locations. So if your personality is more of like, I really want to like infiltrate places, I want to sneak around, I always want to have the upper hand on people, Saboteur, this is Violet, this is Syndrome, is related to that. And then finally, Berserkers. This is the one that Charlie picked. And Berserkers aren't for the faint of heart. This is Jack. Though extremely powerful, they are a complete wild card when it comes to personality and intelligence. Choose a Berserker if you really want to make things interesting and more challenging. Corey, please do not pick Berserker. Because if you have 2 Berserkers on your team, so many unpredictable, chaotic things will happen, and the rest of your team will be very annoyed. The non-Berserkers will be, at least. But okay, do you have any questions about these classes before we dig into them a little bit in more detail?
No, I think that's perfect.
Is there a class right now that you're leaning to more than other ones? Like, which ones appeal to you the most?
I think I'm right now between Incredibles and Saboteurs. I think I'm kind of being pulled in both directions.
All right, good to know. Okay, so it sounds like you have 2 decent backups. Either one would be a pretty good choice for you as a new person. I think as a new person, Incredibles is definitely a smart way to go. Okay. So you see our 2 examples are Mr. Incredible and Brick. Incredibles are physically dominant supers and have a variety of natural abilities. So your power increases a bit, so like your strength and everything. Your base walking speed, you're a little bit slower than the other characters, but not that much. Because of your glory days, you have a leg up when it comes to history, investigation. That's going to help you with your profession, like deciding your profession later on. And you're ambitious, which means you get to choose 2 backgrounds, and you'll understand why that's helpful later. But that is a very good perk. All right, flexibles. So we have 1 flexible on the team so far. We have 1 incredible, 1 flexible, and 1 berserker and 1 saboteur. Flexibles are well-rounded supers. So your vitality goes up a bit, which is really important. So you're a little bit healthier. You're a little bit faster than the other players. You get extra points in diplomacy and insight, so you're more of a people person. And you have this really cool thing called precision tactics. So when you perform a physical attack and hit, you deal an extra thing of damage. And so you roll a dice that has 4 sides on it. And if you get the highest one, 4, the enemy is stunned, which just means that they can't do anything for a turn. So it's a pretty good perk. Yeah, so Frozone, who is a good example of this. So these are 2 characters who, you could be more of a melee character, or you could be a character who has ranged attacks. So that's something to keep in mind. Skirmishers. We do not have a skirmisher yet. I hope you or Matt take this one, because it's very, very useful to the team. But yeah, so skirmishers are basically the fastest. It says here that your base starts at 35, but you have a lot of perks that boost that up a bit. Your dexterity ability, for example, increases by 2, which is super, super helpful for being able to pull off melee and ranged attacks that are a little more complicated. You gain a +2 in athletics and force. You have this special ability called Under Pressure, which means that you are even faster when you have half of your health points or one of your allies is unconscious. So then you get this special ability. And that's the owl guy from Incredibles 2. He is also a skirmisher.
Classic character.
All right, here's one you were interested in, Saboteurs. Saboteurs are the most resourceful. You get extra ability in cunning, which helps in conversations. You're not super fast. You have 30 feet, but you are pretty effective when it comes to stealth and stealing. And you have a special ability called Infiltrator. So you gain advantage when attempting to steal or hack, and you don't make noise when sneaking. So gaining advantage just means that you get to, let's say you're trying to do something, you have to roll a dice and you have to get a high enough score to do it, right? Advantage means that you get to roll the dice twice, and you get to choose the highest score of the 2 dice. So it's super helpful.
Right.
Yes. So if you try to do a lockpick thing and you don't get high enough score, you roll 2 dice. So you maybe the higher score comes on the second one. And then finally, Berserkers, which I must caution you against with all of the fiber of my being. Berserkers are unpredictable supers with a variety of natural abilities. Your power ability increases by 3, so you're extremely strong. However, your speed is very low at 25 feet. But you start with 2 superpowers instead of 1, and you collect more superpowers as you go in the game. But here's the downside, randomizer. When you use a superpower, roll a die that corresponds with how many powers you have and use only the power associated with the number. And not only that, but as the Hero Master, I do a secondary die that allows me to basically figure out the effectiveness of what you're doing. So for example, if you're trying to do, you're like, oh, I want to do use a superpower on this enemy. So maybe you want to use telekinesis or something. I roll a special die, and instead of telekinesis, instead you turn into the demon thing, and you just start attacking a wall. That's kind of what happens with Berserker. It's a very, very chaotic thing, and that's why Charlie is doing it, because he has a lot of experience and he thinks it'll be fun, I guess. Do you have any questions about the classes before we move on? I want you to keep them in the back of your mind. You don't have to just pick one quite yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking Saboteur is where I'm leaning the heaviest.
Okay. I'm trying to remember who is a Saboteur. Do we have a Saboteur?
I think you said 1.
You know what? I think we did have a Saboteur. I think the Saboteur is the one who changed to Incredible. So this one actually might be open. You might be good to take this one.
Dope.
Cool. Okay. Saboteur is very flexible, even though they're not the flexibles. But flexible in the sense of like superpowers. There's like plenty of superpowers that go well with it.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to go into arguably the most fun thing to do for Operation Super, which is choosing your superpower. Now, you'll notice there are some superpowers on the left here and some on the right. The ones on the left are the ones you can choose as a Saboteur. The ones on the right are only for Berserker. So I'll read this. So your superpower is arguably the most defining asset for what makes you a super. It represents your main role in the team and how you can contribute to everyone's success. It also shapes your combat capability, how you interact with your team, and how the world will define you. Some powers level up or evolve as you level up. You might even develop entirely new abilities. So we'll go through like kind of the leveling of each power. We don't have time to go through all of them. So like maybe you can pick a couple you're interested in and I can show you how it would work, right? But I can give you a quick overview. So there is super strength, which is great for fighting, of course. One thing about super strength that might not be immediately obvious is that you're not just like Mr. Incredible. You can also be an incredibly powerful martial artist. You can learn all kinds of like karate moves. Of all the powers, you have the most variety of attacks. There's a lot of different attacks you can do melee-wise. You're easily the strongest character when it comes to melee, at least in terms of like versatility. And obviously you're super strong. So there's a lot of things you can do outside of combat that your teammates can't. Like busting doors down is really easy for you. You gain advantage on things like that. And also just you're super strong, which means that you have big muscles, which everybody likes that, right? Nobody's picked super strength. Nobody's picked super stretch. So you can extend your limbs to attack at greater distances. This is a nice, this is a good one for flexibles because you need really good dexterity to do this. In order to have like really good melee and ranged variety. But this one's nice because you can attack people from afar. This is really good for being sneaky as well, though, because if you recall Elastigirl in the first Incredibles, sneakiest super, especially compared to Mr. Incredible, who literally just like throws a rock to like distract the guards. She's able to like infiltrate the entire thing without basically being seen. You also get a lot of really cool power abilities when you super stretch that allow you to like take less damage, avoid you're hard to hit, stuff like that. Okay, super speed. This one is pretty like explanatory. You can move a lot faster than other players. As you level up, you can get so insanely fast. It's actually kind of game breaking. But yeah, you get like power, you get dexterity. Melee is really good for you. And you could like make it so your super speed, for example, like you could be using like a gun, but your super speed allows you to like move away, shoot, move close in, shoot, move away, shoot. It's pretty useful. Force field. Somebody has picked force field. So far, I should say. So somebody has picked force field, elemental, and the berserker stuff. So the three ones that are open are super speed, super stretch, and super strength. But force field is like you create a barrier. Eventually, you can develop a new invisibility skill. The person who's doing force field is doing it in like a dark energy kind of fashion, which is pretty interesting. It's very different from Violet. It's like you're kind of like channeling like dark elemental energy almost, and you have like force field grenades. It's pretty wild. And then elemental is like you get to choose from like ice, fire, or lightning, and those have like different effects like outside of combat too. That's like mainly ranged. Like you can do some melee stuff, but it's not that effective. And then finally, the berserker stuff. This is just the beginning. When we play, I want to be able to add in more powers that Charlie doesn't even know about, because it's Jack, right? So I should say he's a berserker detective. So he's going to be like an adult Jack who is a detective, if that sounds appealing to you.
Interesting.
So, Cory, which of these powers sounds most appealing to you? What's your like top two?
I would say I'm either going with super stretch or elemental.
Very cool. The elemental that has been picked is fire. So the nice thing about that is you could still be like totally doing your own thing with ice or lightning. So we'll go through super stretch and elemental. So, and then you can go through the handbook if you're interested in the other ones you want to see. As you level up, you get like new abilities, you get like special like passive things. There's a lot of cool stuff. For Saboteur, I would say that super stretch is probably the better thing to do because your abilities are a little bit more well suited. But you could, as a Saboteur, you could do cool stuff with Elemental. Let's go through it. Okay. So Super Stretch. You gain extra dexterity when you do Super Stretch, like just starting off the game. You get extra force, which will help you in combat. You get a simple weapon, which is just things like simple weapons are like guns, a staff, a gauntlet, just extra stuff to make it a little stronger. And gear, that's just related to like survival, like a bed roll and like, water bottles, flashlights, stuff like that. Everybody gets the simple weapon and gear thing. So level 1, you get this thing called Kinetic Attacks. So since you can stretch, you can literally wind up your body so that when you punch or you kick, you get like you have a chance to inflict extra damage on people. So those are your two main powers. And then at level 2, you get something called Immobilize, which is really unique. You can basically think of Elastigirl like wrapping herself around somebody. You can immobilize them for one turn. It's like stunning them basically and leave them open to attack from somebody else. So one of the things you have to do to succeed in Operation Super is you have to like combine your attacks with other characters. And Super Stretch is a really good thing for that because you can really help your other teammates take down enemies who would otherwise be too quick to take down, especially if you fight other supers. So Immobilize is good outside of combat. It also allows you, which is good for Saboteur, to take down an enemy while you're in stealth. So normally, if you were like trying to like take somebody down in stealth, you would have to do like a really hard check to do that. Without anybody noticing. But with Immobilize at level 2, you can do that really easily. Like, I think in most cases you would be able to do, you wouldn't have like as hard of a roll you'd have to achieve for that. Then level 3, you just get bonus in damage. You get a couple new abilities, like you can disarm people and like throw their weapons away. So like you could get people to not have guns anymore. You can deflect an unarmed attack or a blunt attack. Basically make yourself harder to hit. At level 4, you get to pick one of like 3 techniques called forbidden techniques. So you can like levitate by like making yourself a balloon. You could choose being a parachute. So if you want to like drop down into an enemy hideout, you can make yourself as a parachute and carry up to 2 players. You can absorb damage. So you take less damage from attacks because you basically make your stretchy body like more absorbent. You can flatten yourself like paper so that like if somebody tries to shoot you or punch you, you're much harder to hit. And then one of the things combined with this is you also get something called extra effort, which just allows you to increase your ability scores a bit. Any questions before we get into like the level 5, level 6?
I think I should be good.
Okay. I hope I'm explaining this well.
No,
it's a lot of info. Level 5, you get like a super attack. So everybody at level 5 gets something really cool. For example, like the force field user gets invisibility. The super strength person gets like steel skin. For the super stretch person, you get a special ability called Ricochet. It's an attack that allows you to attack up to 3 enemies who are pretty close to you. And like you get to inflict damage on all 3 of them. It's kind of like a pinball kind of thing. So it's pretty useful. And then you also get extra speed, which will be helpful for stealth, obviously. And then at level 6, you get to add an extra technique that you couldn't have at level 4. So if you wanted to get parachute at this point or absorber or something that you didn't pick, you can do that. So those are all of the levels for Super Stretch. Any questions before we move on to Elemental?
No, that should be perfect.
Does it sound appealing?
It does. I'm kind of maybe leaning towards that a little bit, but I want to hear Elemental out.
All right. Elemental, there are some uses if you want to go the sneaky route. That said, I should mention, Saboteur isn't just about being sneaky. Saboteur is about being creative with your superpowers. That's why I included Syndrome in it. He's somebody who like has like gadgets and gizmos and like he's just resourceful. Like that's the idea. So you don't have to be married to the idea as a Saboteur to be sneaky. You could also just be a well-rounded character who is just quick, balanced, and is able to like handle a variety of different combat scenarios. And that's kind of what you would want to do if you were Elemental. You wouldn't be as great you wouldn't be as great of a melee character, but you would still be pretty useful to your teammates outside of combat, which is really important. I'll explain this more later, but the more useful you are to your super team outside of combat, the easier it is for you to level up, because as you level up, there are limits to what you can do. Like you can't level up your superpower at the same time you level up your profession, and you get special perks for both. But if you pick a superpower that's really useful to people outside of combat, you level up a little bit faster. So pointing that out there. So you want to pay special attention to things that are useful about your powers besides just defeating enemies, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so elemental. This is good because you do get extra points in stealth and insight, so that goes well with Saboteur. Then you get to do a +1 in a skill of your choice. So as a Saboteur, for example, if you feel like you want a little bit of extra power, you could do that. You already gain +3 in power, which is good. You could really just make your elemental powers really powerful. But you could also make yourself just able to be sneakier. You can make yourself able to have better athletics, whatever you want to do. You don't get you're supposed to get, I have to fix this. You do get a simple weapon for elemental. I think there's only one simple weapon you're allowed to get. I can't remember how I worked that in. That'll get figured out later. Sorry. Okay, so at level 1, you pick your element: ice, fire, or lightning. Now, Bridget, who is going to be playing with us, she picked fire because for her profession, which we're choosing later, she picked chef. So she wants to be the chef of the super team and be able to keep everybody well fed. So she picked fire because that will help her like create meals and stuff. Like whenever you're out in like a mission and you have to sort of, I should mention, like, it's not just about being a superhero, because it's Incredibles. You're also like spies, you know, like there is like an element of being a secret agent with superpowers. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, you can have ice like Frozone. This is nice because you can get it nice ice. You can like create bridges. You can make it easier for people to traverse like very tricky areas. So ice is really helpful for that. Fire is great because you can provide heat resources in terms of like food, and people get rest bonuses if you create like a fire when you rest. And then lightning is really cool because it helps you. It makes it easier for you to power up machines. You can, like, if you're in an enemy hideout, there's like certain advantages to your lightning powers that you were able to like have like hack advantage and like more technical stuff. So if you wanted to be sneaky, lightning and ice are the most useful, because ice, you could get into an enemy hideout easier. With lightning, you could like hack an AI or something like that a little bit easier. Ice, you can freeze. Lightning, you can paralyze your enemies. So then you get 2 attacks, elemental. One is ranged, one is melee. The ranged one is elemental beam. So you shoot ice, you shoot fire, you shoot lightning. You have a range of about 30 feet, and you get pretty good damage, and you have this special bonus thing called power stream. So if you roll a 5 or higher on your 6-sided die, then the enemy gets either frostbite, burning, or shock. So it's like just a little bit of like extra damage that they get. And if you roll another die on top of that, and if you get a 4, then that person either gets frozen, prone from burning, or paralyzed. Prone from burning is really, really bad for an enemy, because not only do they take damage from burning, but on their next turn, they can't do as much because they're on the ground. Okay, and then there's Elemental Fist, which is a melee attack. And this one would be a little bit harder to pull off effectively as a Saboteur, because you wouldn't be able to like do it sneakily, but it is resourceful just because like you can. The nice thing about Elemental is like, and the reason Flexibles tend to choose it is because you have more balance in terms of like, you can do melee, but you could also like keep some distance and do ranged attacks. And Elemental Fist is your option there. And you can stun an enemy by rolling a high 1d6. Okay. At level 2, you get to choose a fighting style. So you either want to be a sharpshooter or you want to be a tactical fighter. Sharpshooters, it just means that you get to like, you're committing more to range. Like you want to be able to fight people from a distance. You want to use elemental beam most of the time. You want to just like pick people off in a sniper kind of way. And you can set yourself to grounded so you do extra damage, but you leave yourself a little bit more vulnerable. Tactical is you're able to deal extra damage to other enemies who are next to each other, which is really helpful for melee attacks, because if you're fighting one enemy and you're like in a fist fight, then you're doing bonus damage to at least one other person who's near you. And then you also get Super Suit, which means you're harder to hit, which is really good for melee users. So you're a little bit less open to damage. At level 3, you get these extra perks called features. So if you're fighting non-humans like animals or machines, you deal double damage, which is super useful if you're lightning. Because if you're fighting robots, and you will be fighting a lot of robots because it's Incredibles, you are definitely going to be the most resourceful fighter on the battlefield. You get something called lightning reaction. So if an enemy moves within 10 feet of you, you can interrupt to perform an attack against them unless you are in like a grounded mode. And then perfect aim. So whenever you attack and hit an enemy, you get to add extra damage equal to your dexterity effort, which is super useful. That'll make more sense like when we're playing, but yeah, basically you just get extra damage. And then you get to level 4. Level 4, you get to pick a companion. There's 2 animals and a robot that you get to make your companion. So being one with nature, Cory, has helped you appreciate all creatures and the energy of life. You've gained either an animal companion or robotic companion. So after you take a turn when you're fighting, your companion gets to take a turn. And also they're large enough for you to ride them. So as an action, you may move into your companion's space to mount it. If you're already adjacent to your companion, you may mount it without spending an action. Choose one of the following companions. So you can pick a polar bear, a griffin, or a sentinel. So the polar bear is like the strongest, sturdiest tank kind of thing. Griffin isn't as strong, but you can like fly with it. And a sentinel can fly, but like shorter distances. And this was like really good range power. And then at level 5, you get like a custom gauntlet. So the custom gauntlet means that you get to increase your range. You get to use like explosive blasts. You do extra damage with your fists. It's just a more like a powerful weapon attached to your hands that like increases your abilities. You get to choose, I think, like 3 of these perks you're seeing here. Yeah, choose 3 of the following attributes. So you don't get all of this stuff, but you do get you get to pick 3 of them. And then when you level up, you get to do, I think, 1 or 2 more. But you get extra things like getting extra actions, being harder to hit, like all kinds of stuff like that. And also you can make it so your gauntlet can never be destroyed or require any sort of maintenance. And then level 6, yeah, you get to add 2 additional attributes. Your companion receives extra ability score. So that is elemental. What do you think?
I think I'm going to go with super stretch.
Really? I was wondering. What made you decide?
I don't know. I feel like there's something interesting about the fact that no one else has chosen it. And since I think the game probably works best when you have different people who choose different things, I think for variety's sake, I'll go with that.
How magnanimous and self-sacrificial, like a real super.
Yeah. And for the background I'm beginning to build in my head, I think that one maybe fits a little bit better.
All right. So yeah, I guess it sounds like you'll probably want to lean more toward the sneaky side, possibly.
Yeah.
Now we choose a profession, and we don't have too much left here. So profession is just kind of figuring out like what is your role in the super team primarily. This is really important because the more you're able to do this successfully, the easier it is for you to level up. I should say that when you level up your superpower, but you also level up your profession. You can't level up both at the same time. You have to choose one or the other. And you cannot have your superpower or your profession be 2 levels or more than 2 levels higher than the other one. So you want really good balance. So you want to pick a profession that you're going to be very active in. You feel like you're really going to contribute. It's super important that you don't pick a profession somebody else does because that'll make it super hard for both of you to level up because you will not be able to do as much for the team. So the ones that have been taken so far are Professor, Detective, and Chef. The 2 remaining are Hacker and Doctor. Hacker is really great if you go with the sneaky stuff because you'll be able to like infiltrate and you'll be able to do all kinds of like special stuff in enemy hideouts. Doctor is really good because you can heal people. We need a doctor. I don't know what Matt's leaning toward. The person who chose Professor is the Incredible character who has force field powers. The Detective is the Berserker, and the Chef is the Elemental Fire person. So Yeah, if you were picking elemental, I think hacker would be a no-brainer. But as a super stretch, I think hacker or doctor would be helpful for you. But before we kind of go into like what the perks are, which one sounds more appealing to you?
I think hacker.
Okay, hacker is good. Hacker also, think like Elastigirl, is able to figure out a motorcycle. Even though
Yeah.
she has so Elastigirl's like abilities, like being able to like ride a motorcycle, pilot a plane, that's also an element of hacker. So think of hackers also as like navigators. They help you navigate technology in this strange hip world. So at level 1, you have basic knowledge on how to use gadgets, interfaces. You start with a GPS and a splicer, which helps you hack. When fighting machine enemies, your attacks always do an extra 1d6 of damage. If you were lightning elemental, then and you were a hacker, you would be just like whipping. But even as super stretch, it's really helpful because you can just like, yeah, technology can't beat you basically as long as you're doing great. Level 2, if you're dealing with a piece of technology you've encountered before, like the same kind of like terminal, then you have advantage to hack it. You get like a +1 to your level. And if you roll to hack something at level 3, you always bypass any alarms or fail safes. I misspelled that. Roll, ROLL. So even if you fail to like lockpick, right, or you fail to break like infiltrate a door or something like that through technology, you never like alert anybody else. You have like a nice little cushion. And then at level 4, you can now create your own GPS devices using raw materials. These are just really helpful because if your gang wants to split up, you know where each other are at all times, and you can like basically do way more damage as a group. And then also your attacks against machines is even better. Doctor. So Doctor is pretty self-explanatory. You're able to like keep your teammates afloat, keep them nice and healthy. You're able to harvest medical herbs. You're able to heal the crew. You're able to get medicinal herbs, which are not what they sound like. They won't get you high, but they will like help your teammates restore their health points. So the team needs a doctor. If Matt doesn't pick doctor and you don't pick doctor, you guys are in trouble. That said, you will likely have an NPC who will help try to balance out the team, so don't feel pressured. And what else? Doctor's pretty good. You can like create health kits as you level up. You can, once you get to level 4, I mean, you can basically treat any ailment, poisoning. If something is wrong with somebody, and once the battle's over, you can basically reset them. It's really, really useful. And then, yeah, people have already picked professor. So you already have somebody who's like knowledgeable about intelligence history. You have a detective who is like really cunning and people person. You have a chef who's going to keep you all fed. So between hacker and doctor, are you leaning still toward hacker?
I think so.
Okay. Any questions before we move on to your background?
I think I should be good.
All right. This is the last step before you pick your super, and then you can do all the fun stuff like your superhero name, your secret identity, your origin story, which you get to do on your own time.
Nope.
This is the last part though, choosing a background. So at this point, let's do a refresh. You've already figured out your class, you know, like what makes you when it comes to your fighting style. And you've picked Saboteur, which means you're resourceful, you're creative, you're possibly sneaky. And then you picked your superpower. You're a super stretch user, which means you have all of these abilities that allow you to stretch and do all that extra fun stuff. You've picked a profession. So this is what you do now. This is what you contribute now. You are a hacker. So you are really tech focused. So you are a super stretch tech genius who can get in and out of situations in a pinch. You want to pick a background that is going to best complement that, because each of these backgrounds shapes your origin story, informs who you are today, and allows you to connect with the other players. If you pick something that doesn't really connect, your player is not going to really make enough sense, and you're not going to be able to like have better conversations with characters, which is really, really important. Also, each of these backgrounds has an extra perk. So just looking at this, you don't want to do soldier. Soldier's not super helpful for you because you need really good intelligence insight, which your character is not going to have as easily. Soldiers are really good at like acknowledging weak points. There's already a bureaucrat, which is more intelligence focused. Somebody's already picked that. Somebody's already picked wanderer, which gives you extra dexterity. That would be useful for you. You could also be a wanderer. That would be good. I think athlete would make sense for you. Comedian would not. Prisoner would be very, very good. I think either prisoner or thief. Like your background is like you grew up on the streets, like you don't have the best upbringing, but you were really good at stealing. You're really good. Like you're using your ill-gotten skills for good now. Same thing for prisoner. You have really good athletics. You're able to pick locks really well. So that informs kind of the hacker thing. Now, if you do want to go down the elite path, that's okay too, because you can like gain some bonuses in diplomacy and dealing with people. You already have somebody on the team who's kind of good about that though. So, but you do get extra money. Anti-hero, that would be okay. You get extra insight. Anti-hero is really good if you want to do like a character that doesn't have much of a moral code, which kind of works for the hacker thing. You're able to make decisions in the game that are morally ambiguous without being at disadvantage. And then also student, this one also is not super helpful for you because I don't think your character is going to be really like, if you were going to do something, bureaucrat would make more sense because you could use the extra intelligence, but yeah, it's a lot of stuff. And then there's comedian, which I don't know if anyone's going to pick that. Yeah, any of these stick out to you?
Interesting. I think for what I was thinking about, I could mix thief in there because I feel like with what I'm thinking, I could take the characteristics of a thief and apply them to youth and then put them into what they become as an adult. So that might be where I lean.
Okay, yeah, thief definitely makes a lot of sense. No one's picked it yet, and yeah, you'll be able to like pickpocket people pretty easily. Mm-hmm. You'll have advantage whenever you're in an enemy hideout. Things will be less difficult for you. So when you're in like an enemy hideout and you're trying to do something, difficulty to do things is a lot higher than if you were in like a safe area. Okay. But as a thief, you feel more comfortable in these areas. So you're able to like, you feel at home. So you're a little bit more versatile. You're stretchy, I guess. So we'll say thief for now as a working up. And then the rest of this stuff is just like, you can read through this. It just kind of explains how the effort dice works. This probably won't make a ton of sense unless you're actually doing it. But it could be helpful for you to read through it just to get a sense of like, what are the rules? How will this really work? Weapons wise, these are the simple weapons. I think for you, a nice thing about Saboteurs is you're more able to use a silenced pistol. You're the only character who can. Really great for stealth and everything. So if you want to take down enemies from afar, all it means that a Saboteur can do this is that you have advantage with this weapon. If, for example, if an incredible person tries to use a silenced pistol, it's harder for them to be successful. They get disadvantage, which means they roll 2 dice and they have to pick the lowest score. But for you, it's the opposite. But yeah, you can start the weapon with a staff if you want to use that for your melee. You can use like a shield with your stretch abilities. I don't know how helpful that would be. Taser would be kind of cool because you could like tase people. And then yeah, you have like a gauntlet. That's more for elemental users, but that could be helpful for you because it's like brass knuckles basically. And then yeah, pistol, you could start with that and just be like a ranged. You could have like an extra ranged ability. I don't know actually if that would be super helpful for you because it's not stealthy. Pistols are only really helpful for you if it's stealthy. Or a crossbow. That is stealthy. And you would probably be able to use a crossbow pretty effectively because yeah, you can like do stealth attacks on like a pistol. So, and then there's other rules that have to do with ammunitions, items you can get in the game. That stuff you'll kind of get as you go. But yeah, you start the game with a weapon, and you get to like look. You have some time to decide what weapon you want. You probably want to choose the weapon based on your backstory, so you can make it kind of a cool, story. It's moving on its own, but I'm trying to scroll back up and show you the something else. So hold on a second. There we go. It's like freaking out on me. There's one more thing to show you and we're done. I showed you already, but your gear, Saboteur gear. So everybody starts with gear. Um, People get like special things like flexibles and incredibles get to start with bandages, so they'll be able to like heal, or they can give those bandages to a doctor to use at the start of the game. Skirmishers and berserkers don't really start with much, but Saboteur, you start with 5 lockpicks. So if you choose thief, you are definitely setting yourself up for success. But okay, Cory, that is it. That is everything for Operation Super at this point in time. Do you feel ready to sit down and craft your origin story, your name, your secret identity, all that stuff?
I do.
Well, that's it. Any questions for me then?
I think I should be good. This is very neat. I'm excited to do this.
Oh man, I appreciate everybody who watched this along with us. I'm sure there was a lot of nerdy D&D in it, but I have to say this is a passion project of mine. I'm super excited you're going to be a part of it, Cory. I think that it's going to be a ton of fun, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's it for us then. Have a great rest of your weekend. Hit me up, Cory, if you have any other questions.
I will.
Any ideas? Make sure that I'm going to tell the rest of the team who you picked, so they don't pick your stuff. It's first come, first serve, I guess. But yeah, I guess that'll do it.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm hyped. This is gonna be fun.
All right. See you, everybody.